Live. Welcome to Story Strategy Live. Today we're going to talk about common cliches in your writing and how they can affect your plot and weaken your story overall. So it's just me and Dawn today, but let's get into it. Hi, Dawn.
Hey, how are you?
Well, I have a warning for today's episode. I don't know if it's just all the stress of moving cross country amid a global pandemic and my kids being home from school and my husband being gone or what. But my back has decided to attack me. And so it's been really awful the last couple of days. And I got a prescription for muscle relaxants. And I was going to wait until we were done to take them. But my whole right side is so I took two before about an hour ago. So
Nice.
I can't put on makeup or anything either, which is hard. My arm cramps up. So it should be a very interesting episode. We'll see what happens over the course of the next half hour as these things take hold. Hopefully I'm not going to go 16 candles on us.
Yes, when y'all notice that Nancy just starts smiling and nodding, I'll just keep talking. It'll be fine. We'll just let her rest over there. But I'm sorry your back hurts. And
hopefully I'm hoping, it's been so bad, I'm figuring it's got to be about to get better, right?
Oh, I hope so.
Right.
And this may turn out to be our best show ever. We don't know. We'll just have to see
and
where it
not
goes.
bring a martini to the show. I thought about it, but no water.
Just water.
So how are you, Dawn?
I am good. I didn't take muscle relaxers. I haven't had that bad of a day, but I did want to tell you because some people have already seen this on Facebook, I know, but I wanted to tell you about my daughter's graduation because she is a senior this year and the world has shut down thing has been really upsetting and she's missed a lot of things. And we were really worried that she was not going to get to have a graduation. She goes to a really large high school. She's graduating with 1,100 kids.
Holy cow.
It's not something they could socially distance. And there was all of these rumors coming out of, okay, they're going to push graduation to June. They're going to push graduation to July. They're going to do it in segments of this part of the alphabet will go, and then that part of the alphabet will go. And we officially got the announcement last week that she is graduating at Texas Motor Speedway, which is a NASCAR track.
Okay.
And we, as the family, will be parked in the infield and we cannot leave our cars.
Okay. So it's like a tailgating graduation.
Yes. And the graduates will go out and walk across the finish line to the winner's circle to get their diploma.
That's awesome.
And they will be broadcast on the biggest TV screen in the world. The principal made sure he included that in his email, that this is the biggest TV screen in the world. And in the most Texas thing ever, it is referred to as Big Hoss.
The TV?
Yes.
I love it. I couldn't write this any better. This is awesome.
And so, yes, my daughter is graduating. And what makes this even funnier to me is the fact that her high school mascot is the Farmers.
Yes.
So my daughter is graduating as a farmer at a NASCAR track, walking across the finish line and being projected on Big Hoss.
Rednecks of the world are so jealous.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And we did we got some more information that they're not allowing party buses or limousines or anything like that. You have to come in your regular car. But because this is Texas, if you have a truck, you can sit in the back of the truck.
With your cooler.
So, with our cooler and our, popcorn and watching the drive-in movie. So,
that's awesome.
So yes, that will be quite the experience. I'm really kind of excited about it for her. After she got past the initial, oh my God, this is really going to happen.
Yeah.
Because they're giving them special masks that have the school mascot on it. They have to wear their mask. They have to stay 6 feet apart. They get to take their mask down to accept their diploma and get a picture taken.
That's good.
But after she got past that part of it, she was kind of like, okay, so this is going to make a really cool story. someday.
It is. And I know I'm so glad to hear that they're doing something for them, because I'm not sure what's going on here, but for the kids for whom their schools are just going to be like, okay, yeah, we'll just mail you your diploma, whatever. That's rough. But for like your daughter's school, or for her and her schoolmates, that's a really neat memory. Like,
yes, I'm like, nobody else, well, other people in our county, because a lot of schools in the county latched onto this idea. So other people around here, but very few people in the world are going to be able to be like, I got my diploma walking across the finish line at a NASCAR track, you know?
Yeah. So I think that's really neat. I think that is going to be a cool memory for her.
Yes, I'm excited. Now, the panic part of this was we weren't expecting this to happen until like June or July, and they've moved it back to the original date, which is at the end of May.
Oh, wow.
And so now...
Why panic? What do you mean?
Well, because like, I don't have a graduation gift for her. I didn't think I had to worry about that till the end of July.
No, that's what the internet's for, Dawn.
Yes. So we're making some adjustments, and I hadn't planned on sending out the announcements yet because we didn't know anything.
Oh, right.
So we're gathering all of
them, though. So that's just going to activate the checks in the mail network and that sort of thing.
Yes.
Well,
Because it is being limited to, originally they had said only one car per graduate.
Did they figure that out?
And then I think some of the families that the parents aren't married anymore and don't need to be in the same car together. So their solution to that now has been that each graduate gets to have two cars. One will be parked in the infield and one will be out in the spectator lot.
Oh, so then the divorced parents have to Rochambeau to see who gets the infield?
Yeah, I guess so. I don't have to worry about that part. It's okay. So that's what's been going around here. Is there was a whole like flurry of emails and rush of information at the end of last week, and then now it's all settled. So that's our excitement.
Very good. That is not a cliche graduation.
No, that is very far from a cliche graduation.
Yeah. Well, so let's dive in, shall we?
Yes, let's do that.
Last week we talked with Mindy Klasky about tropes, which are kind of the structural skeleton of romance for sure. And they are common in some other genres as well. So today we're going to talk about cliches. And I think sometimes, especially for people who are poo-pooing romance specifically, they will say things like, oh, well, tropes are just cliches. But I think they're very different. And you came up, I think, with a pretty good analogy. Do you want to share?
I do. I was so excited when I figured this out. Because we know from the business that we're in, it makes sense to us, the difference between a trope and a cliche, and we know how to identify them, but I was trying to figure out the best way to describe it. So here's what I came up with. Tropes are a house, and they're the empty house. And they can all look different. You've got 2-story houses, you've got little tiny houses that I would not last 15 minutes in, but they're really cute on TV. And you've got all of these different styles, the great big mansions, the Victorians, all of this, but it's the house, and you pick the house that you like and you decorate it a different way. So even though we may have the same floor plan, your house is going to look different than my house.
Right. Because they're houses.
Right. Because they're familiar, and that's what the trope is. It's something that's familiar, but it's decorated a different way. Mm-hmm. The cliches, especially the ones that we're going to talk about today, they are the ugly 1970s shag green carpet and the 80s wicker furniture.
They're the plastic over the couch.
Yes, exactly. That from the outside, the house looks good. And then you go in the house and you're like, oh, that's an olive green stove. Huh. And it takes away from the beauty of the house. So. Right.
Because in stories, I think what cliches do, and it's very easy to fall into using them. Because they pop into your head as one of the first things. Like, okay, well, I need a way for her to introduce her features. So I'm just going to put her in front of a mirror and have her put on lipstick and describe what she looks like to my readers. But as soon as you do something like that, realizing that the reason you thought of it was because you've read it 30,000 times, you're weakening your story. You're taking away an opportunity to share your voice and to define yourself as an author, and also to make your story unique. So that's why cliches they're crutches, really, for writers.
Yes. Yes. And when we were putting these together, I think we came up with some good examples of standard cliches and why they don't work. And a couple of times, because there's an exception to every rule, a couple of times they will work. They work fine. I've read books that have some of this stuff that you're like, oh, that works. But it's just like Mindy mentioned last week, it has to be something different.
Yeah.
There's a twist to it that makes it work instead of the same old thing.
And I think, as with all writing rules, great writers can break them. And I think that that's something that, if you're comfortable breaking a rule, and that then go with it. But if you're just starting out, I would say try to follow the rules until you kind of know where you're good and where you might need help, and get your feet on the ground before you start breaking the rules.
And listen to your editors when they tell you, I've seen this 12 times in the past 6 months. You might want to consider a different way of doing this.
Exactly. So let's talk about what we've got them broken out. So there's common plot cliches, and then there's also character cliches.
Yes.
So let's go through. Well, I kind of went out of order there. We'll get back to the reflection one, I guess. But
okay.
We see all the time, right? The book starts with the character waking up.
Yeah.
So why doesn't that work?
That doesn't work because it's very mundane and boring. And I don't need to know that your character woke up, got out of bed, went and brushed her teeth, had some cereal, put on makeup and lips, which is the only makeup anybody in a book ever wears, and then left the house to go to work.
Yeah.
And I think where that comes from is some plotting strategy guides and methods will talk about setting up your character's ordinary world, their everyday world. But that's not exactly what they mean.
Yeah. Right? Don't set up a boring world. Set up there's something about your character that makes them unique and interesting enough to write an entire book about them. So their ordinary world should be somewhat different than, say, the writer's ordinary world, where you I got some orange juice. Nobody wants to read that.
No. Well, and where the other thing is it slows your pacing. If I pick up a book, you've got a very limited amount of time to catch my attention and keep my attention before I'm putting the book down and going to the 800 other things that could be stealing my attention. And so you've got to catch me and get the story moving.
Exactly.
And that doesn't mean that
on for all the fidgeting. When something cramps up, I have to stretch it out, or else I'm gonna cry.
You can all you want. Okay. We would rather you fidget than you cry in pain. So just fidget all you need to. It's okay. Now, where this can work is if it's showing something different has happened.
If something startling is in your bed when you wake up.
Right. Yes. If you have a woman waking up and there's a man in her bed and she doesn't remember there being one when she went to sleep the night before, then you got a story.
Or you wake up in a world that is black and white for some reason. Or there's something amazing about, and waking up was when you crossed the threshold. So you're starting, what do they call it, in medias res, in the middle of the action, kind of. If for a normal story, waking up is not going to be the middle of the action, and we probably don't need to see it. Right.
And one example I have seen of where this works is in the Hunger Games, because it starts with Katniss waking up.
Huh.
But it's because something different. She wakes up and her sister's not there. So it's something different has happened. We don't see her waking up and going about her normal morning routine. There's something different there.
And isn't it the day of the, whatever they call it, where they pick the names?
Yes. Yeah. I don't remember what it's called, but yes, I bet it is that day.
I don't remember what was going on, but I don't think they've seen or read the Hunger Games, but he threw himself in front of his brother and screamed, "I volunteer as tribute." And I was like,
nice.
You're good.
Good brother.
Also, impressive use of literature.
Yes, very proud, very proud.
Yeah. So another thing like that, I think, is well, I think I revealed the last one. So why don't you reveal? I'm stealing your thunder.
Oh no, that is the thunder. Oh, I see what you did there. The next thing is starting with the weather. Unless the weather is going to be very important to what's going on.
Maybe your character is a weatherman.
Okay. I want to see where that one's going to go.
We'll write a weatherman.
Yes, if your character's a weatherman and he has been predicting snow and he wakes up and it's 85 degrees in the morning and he's looking out at the weather, then that works.
Right.
Where this doesn't work is where you have a character and the book starts off with something like, "It was a beautiful day when Dawn stepped out onto her porch."
Or the classic Snoopy, "It was a dark and stormy night."
Right. Yes. Now I love Snoopy. But right. One thing is you've got, and this gets into kind of what we're going to talk about next week too. You've got a generic phrase in there of "it was a beautiful day." Mm-hmm. Because your beautiful day and my beautiful day might look a lot different.
Exactly.
And so it's not giving your character enough, it's not giving your reader enough information. And where it could work is if you have a woman fleeing from danger in the middle of a downpour and she's trying to drive a car that doesn't have power steering and slides and hydroplanes, that kind of thing. Even then, you're still not really describing the weather. You're describing the experience through her POV.
Right.
So unless you're writing like Twister or
you could have a character who, the writer could use the weather to reveal something about the character or what's going to happen. For instance, the woman steps out her door and it's black and ugly and humid and awful. And she says, "It's a beautiful day. It smells like cyanide," or, something that just makes clear.
Right. If you're using it to open that question, that's great. But generic weather, no generic weather.
Yeah. All right. This is the one I touched on before, a point of view character describing themselves in a reflection. Mirrors are obvious, but also don't have them at the museum seeing themselves reflected in the glass. Don't have them in the water of the pond, the swimming pool, anything else reflective. Car window. Cell phone. Yeah, it's all been done. It's all painful. Please don't do it.
Yes, it's all painful, all of it.
And there is little need, honestly, as you're introducing a character, to tell us what they look like. I know that seems really important sometimes because you're like, oh, but I mean, she has short hair and I need people to know that she's curvy, or you don't, because you can reveal that in other ways. Like she fastened the button on her jeans and reminded herself that last 3 cookies she had maybe were 3 too many, or, I mean, that's not a good example. But I think that there are plenty of ways that you can explain what somebody looks like without having them look at themselves in a mirror. And don't introduce other characters with their looks first either, I don't think.
Yes. Well, and one of the big things I always have to point out about looking in the mirror is we don't notice that much about ourselves when we look in the mirror. I've had the same color eyes my entire life. So when I look in the mirror, I do not think about my eye color, ever. I do not think about the length of my hair.
But what do you notice?
You usually notice flaws. Yes.
Exactly. So that could work, and that could be very revealing, actually, to show a character's wound or their insecurities. She looked in the mirror at the crow's eyes or the crow's feet that were developing around her eyes and wished that she were 10 years younger. Or
right. Or if something has recently happened to that character, like if they're recovering from a car accident and they look in the mirror to see if the gash across their face is healed. It's got to be something different, but we so often just see it of the person wakes up, looks outside, sees what a beautiful day it is, goes to the bathroom and starts getting ready, and is describing themselves as, and what's a lot of fun is reading the characters describing themselves in the way nobody ever describes themselves.
Yeah.
Like,
My mousy brown hair fell right around my shoulders as my bright green eyes glittered.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And so that's kind of, I think that might have worked like twice in YA books a really long time ago, and somebody just grabbed it and ran with it. And even when you try to hide it, like you said, even when you try to hide it of, oh, they're not looking in a mirror, they're looking in the reflection of the frying pan they're about to make eggs in. You really don't think about yourself when you see yourself like that.
No.
So skip that.
There's someone sneaking up behind you about to kill you or something like that.
Right. Yes.
Then bring on the reflection. All right, what else?
I'm going to let you do the next one because the last one I have to do.
Okay. Oh, you do. Okay. It's Dawn's hot button issue.
Yes.
So this one is starting in a dream. And I think this one is dangerous because when you're opening a new book and you're starting a story, you're trying to get your feet on the ground as a reader. You're trying to figure out where we are, who are these people, am I invested, do I care, what are we worried about, what's happening? And if you start with a dream, you're cheating the reader because you're giving them a world that does not exist. And the very first introduction they have to your story is false. Mm-hmm. So I guess it's a plot device, and I could see it working maybe sometimes. I don't know if I have examples for when it could work on this one. I don't like it. And I think it's lazy. Some people use it to show flashbacks. Some people use dreams to do info dumps. They think that the reader needs to know absolutely everything about this character's childhood before they introduce the character. And
they don't.
None of that is true. So there's probably a situation where there's a good reason to use a dream as an opening, but most, I would say, don't.
Well, and it makes you have double work because you start with the opening of the dream, and by you, I mean the writer and the reader. You start with the opening of the dream, you go through the whole experience of the dream, and then you're reintroducing that character for real in the next scene. And so whenever we hit their real life, then it's like we're at the beginning of the book again.
Well, and it would have to be a fascinating dream and a really good writer to make me as a reader want to go through the work of being like, oh, okay, that none of that was what I need to know. Now let's start again. Like, that's exhausting.
Right. Yes. So don't start with a dream.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so this is my big one. This is my personal, I don't know if this is a personal pet peeve, if I have just gotten on a soapbox about this.
I get text messages every single time she sees it. I get a text message from you every single time.
Yes.
Where you're like, oh.
Yes, I'm sorry, because I just can't handle it. Characters and people in real life very rarely physically run into each other. And where I kind of, when you started getting the text messages, is this is no lie. I counted them from January, maybe late December, until now. I have read 9 different manuscripts where people physically smashed into each other.
I had one that you read. Is mine in there where she ran into the bar in a car and that was the meet cute? Does that count?
No.
Well, it should.
No, I'm talking about like people. These are people who are walking like, I assume, normal human beings and just slam into somebody's chest. And it's always, they always slam into them hard enough that usually the hero has to grab the heroine to keep her from falling down. And I'm like, well, first of all, how fast are you walking? Slow down.
Yeah.
There's physics involved in there. And why don't either one of you look up? And I am super clumsy. That is just a feature of me. I have physically run into people in my life, but never once did I run into somebody hard enough they had to catch me. And then I looked up and went, oh. Your chiseled abs are so attractive from here.
Glittering green eyes.
Stop it. Don't run into each other.
Yeah, and better way.
Yes, and the same on a smaller scale is, because I haven't seen this quite as much, is the heroine tripping over something and falling literally into the hero's arms.
Yeah.
Both of those.
Paying attention, and he catches her. every single time.
Yes.
It would be sort of funny if she just tripped and fell in front of him.
Right, and he just went, oh, oops. You know?
Yeah. And that's sort of the trope thing too, right? So take the cliche, if you must, and then do something to it to make it not the cliche.
Right. Right. Well, and the other thing is, and I will get off my running into people's soapbox in just a second, I promise. But the other thing that has bothered me about that is the reaction of the people running into somebody. Because often I see them run into each other, and then like, if it's supposed to be a alpha hero who's supposed to be all cool and everything, he'll say something like, watch where you're going.
Right.
And we try to keep this PG, so I won't repeat what I would say back to somebody who did that to me. But that's not the guy you want her falling in love with.
Probably not. But maybe he's just having a really bad day, Dawn.
Yes. Well, I mean, he just stood there and let somebody run into him, so he must be having something.
His head somewhere else. But his bad attitude.
Yes. So that's my personal thing.
But you did put on here that someone is fleeing danger, that it could possibly be okay.
Yes, where I put on there, when does it work? And my first response was never. It never works. But I realized that might be a personal bias at this point. Where I could see it working is if you have someone running from danger and smacks into somebody, and I just saw the comment pop up. I promise we're not talking about any specific clients. But if you had somebody running from danger and they smack into somebody, or if there is a very specific reason, and looking at your phone is not a good enough reason, because most of us at this point are practiced enough of looking at their phone and looking back up. A very specific reason why neither person is looking up, and they run into each other. So, do you agree with the comment that just popped up?
I am less averse to the running into each other thing than Dawn, especially because you may hate it, Dawn, but it is kind of a standard rom-com, especially meet cute.
Yes, it is. I know.
Almost a trope. I mean,
almost.
Yeah. So never fear if your dream in life is to write two characters running into each other. Dawn will get over it.
I will. Just make them have motivation. That's going to go into what we're talking about with character cliches here in a minute. If there's a justification for it, because we've seen all of these cliches we're talking about done very well, and they can work. But I need a justification other than I am so involved in my phone, I don't notice this super hot 6'4", built like a brick wall dude barreling towards me until he smacks into me and I fall over.
Right. Well, and I think, like I said a minute ago, I think this is the muscle relaxant kicking in. Either I said this earlier when we were talking, or I said it a minute ago, that in the hands of a good writer, even the most cliche thing can work well. So.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
And so we have, those were the plot cliches, sort of the setups that we see used a lot. And then there are also character cliches. So I think these ones are more interesting to me because a lot of times even really experienced writers will use them without giving it a lot of thought. Like they'll throw a character in for a purpose, but the character has no other, like they're not three-dimensional. There's no purpose to that character except to fulfill this specific plot need.
Yes.
And we'll kind of get into some of them. So the first one that we have is the villains or antagonists who have no discernible motive. The guys that are bad just to be bad. Like they're constantly there to thwart your hero, to stop the progress of whatever it is he's trying to achieve. But we never really get to see why, like what's driving the bad guy to be the bad guy, right?
Yes, they have to have a reason. And it goes back to the whole, the villain is the hero of his own story.
Yes.
He has to have a reason. And people are rarely mean just for the sake of being mean.
Yeah.
There's something driving that. And even if you're writing YA and you're talking about being in a high school, I taught high school for a long time. Yes, there are people in high school who are mean, but generally you're not even on their radar. They've already picked somebody they're picking on, and there's a history or there's some reason there. So they have to have something driving that force for them.
Yeah. So just like you have to come up with your goal, motivation, and conflict for the hero, your antagonist, if you have one, and if you're writing romance, you may not specifically have an antagonist, and that is okay. You may still have someone thwarting the love plot, though, and that person, we'll get into some examples of those people, but they also have a motivation. There's a reason why they do the things they do, and if there is not a reason, then they're a flat character, and they're just sort of gumming up your plot.
Well, and they have to have something to gain from it. People don't do things without getting some kind of reward from it. Yeah. And so if you're like, well, the reason this character is mean to this girl is because her home life is bad. Okay, but what does she gain by being mean to this specific person?
Right.
How is it transferring? And so there's got to be a clear. And it's not something, and that this is something we should have laid out in the beginning. You don't want to be saying about the villain of, well, she's trying to thwart the love plot, because it's something that can be gradually revealed, but it does need to eventually be revealed.
Right. But as the writer, you should know in your mind.
You should know, definitely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, you should know.
So what's another one?
The plain girl who doesn't know she's beautiful. She's never been hit on by anybody in her life. She's never been told she's pretty until the guy comes up and sees the real her, and suddenly she's super hot.
But that's the entire plot of one of my favorite 80s and 90s rom-com movies. What is it? With a cute little girl with the short hair. She's tiny, and she's like art girl, but then she puts on a dress.
Oh, she's all that.
He's all that. That's right.
Yes, I know exactly which one you're talking about. Yes,
but it is a little bit of a cliche.
It is a little bit. It's cliche. I know exactly what movie you're talking about. And my favorite part of that movie is that when she's coming down the stairs and she puts on a dress and takes off her glasses, and that's all you got to do.
And she's gorgeous.
Yes, and she's gorgeous, and she's coming down the stairs and she trips, and I'm like, that would totally be me.
Yeah.
That would totally be. So, yeah, it's the idea, and not that every woman sees themselves as attractive as they actually are. And obviously you want the hero, especially in a romance, you want the hero to see her differently than everybody else, and to see that she is so beautiful when maybe she doesn't believe it herself. But it's the idea that no one has ever paid attention to her ever.
Yeah.
And then randomly this really hot guy.
Well, and I think that can introduce other problems, because if your female lead is so absent of confidence that all of a sudden when this man or whoever decides that she's it, that she's gorgeous, that she's the one, that's going to change her so much that they can have their happily ever after. Because if a person has never believed that they were beautiful ever, I have a hard time believing that in the course of even 6 months, a year, however long you're going to make your book, that they could make a realistic transformation and be in a fulfilling relationship with the confidence that's required to actually have a happily ever after. Maybe that's a little too, therapist-y woo-woo, but we're writing about we want them to be realistic, right?
And where this could work is if the character has confidence in something else already. Like, for example, in the movie you're talking about, she's very confident in her art skills.
Right.
She's very confident in that part of her life. She's just never felt comfortable being dressy and being with a good looking guy and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying never have a girl who has the ugly duckling story, basically, of she goes through a transformation and suddenly she's a swan, because those stories are a lot of fun. I'm saying that she needs to have existed before this guy looked at her, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. Have an identity. Be confident in who you are. You may not think you're beautiful, or I think an interesting twist on that would be to have him, like, maybe she is only beautiful. That's the only thing she thinks she has going for her. She's always known she was beautiful and she uses that. But hey, this guy sees that, wow, she's a really awesome construction worker, or
Right. Yeah. Sees the talent beyond this.
Yeah.
She can weld like nobody's business.
There you go. Very flat fancy. All right. Yeah, I like that one. Oh, this is good too. Yeah. So we see, especially in the age of bully romance, which has been a thing, which I'm not all that excited about. That's another story. We get a lot of alphas though, right? Even the bossy businessman, the man who knows what he wants and he's a jerk to everybody, and it's because he had a hard childhood or whatever. But basically people will write an asshole, and he continues to be an asshole pretty much through the whole book, except maybe sometimes to the heroine. But I've seen him also be an asshole to the heroine through the entire book, and she still falls in love with him. And I don't know. He needs a really good reason to be that much of a dick.
Yes, definitely. I, of course, was raised in the South, and so manners and politeness. And I was raised on the idea of a person who is nice to you but isn't nice to the waiter is not a nice person.
Yeah.
And so, and yes, there are some of our clients even have these books where these guys are total jerks. Like, you would not want to spend 5 minutes with them, but then you see the other side of them and how they are with the heroine. And you see what's causing that. Like, if he's being that way towards everybody else because he's having to do this to protect her, then you start to see, and one of the really good examples of this is you see this person who starts off just a horrible person, and you're like, okay, I don't know why you're even talking to him. I wouldn't answer my phone if he called. And then you gradually see that's really not who he is.
Yeah. I'm a giant. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Lucy Score is not a client. I should caveat, but I'm a huge Lucy Score fan, both personally and a fan of her writing. And her latest book, By a Thread, she first called it Grumpy Grump Face because the hero is so just grumpy and jerky, and he's such a dick. But you see him doing like very nice things outside of his main focus, and he doesn't even really realize that these are very nice things he's doing. He has grumpy reasons why he's doing them, but inside you can see like he's a nice person. And I think if you're gonna write a big jerk, you have to give him something like that. It doesn't have to be like feeding the homeless in my spare time, but make it something.
Yes, it has to be like the anti-hero is fine, and the bad boy romance guy who isn't the guy you want to bring home to your mom, but you sure want to rent him for a couple of hours, that's all right. Those are okay. But there has to be something to where you can look at the heroine and understand why she wants to be with him.
Yes.
And I call it the best friend factor of, if the heroine was explaining this to her best friend, how would she be able to justify, I want to stay with this guy who's an ass?
Yeah, that's good.
And so normally that's where you get to see the shift in the character, and you're like, oh, he's so mean. He's a porcupine to these people, but he's a big teddy bear to her. And so I think as long as that shift is there, it's fine. I think what we're seeing now is a trend of where you never get to see the shift.
Yeah.
They're just jerks to be jerks. And then it's like, okay, yeah, I'm tired of hanging out with you. And that's really what you're asking the reader to do. You want the reader to hang out with all of your people for a little while. And so you want that character to be somebody that eventually the reader's like, yeah, he's kind of rude, but once you get to know him, he's okay.
Yeah.
And you got to get to know
him. The overly clumsy heroine.
Yes.
He's cute. There's always, it's fun to write a klutzy character. But make sure that there's more to her than that. Like, unless she's just comic relief and a sidekick or something. And again, all of your characters should have some depth and a purpose for being there. So if she's the best friend who's, klutzy and always doing crazy things, great. But make sure she's relatable too.
Yes. And like I said, as somebody who's been clumsy my entire life, I just accept this about me. There's another layer to that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of Bridget Jones's Diary, which I loved, and I read the books as well as watched the movies. But she's kind of the prime example of that for me. Of she's clumsy, she does ridiculous things, and it's always the she got drunk and got up on stage and proclaimed her love for somebody or something like that. And they do these ridiculous things, but you want to have the other side of that so that you know that there's a heart behind it. And that even though they're clumsy, they're not unintelligent. They're still you want to make them a whole human, basically.
Yeah, exactly. All right. This one's yours because
yes, the broody, snarky, lazy, rebellious teenager with no respect for authority. This is something that I'm real particular about because I did teach high school for a long time. I do have 2 teenagers, and I don't like seeing them presented in literature. You don't usually see it in YA, but you see it in adult literature of there's this random teenager that shows up, and for zero reason, they're completely disrespectful to everybody. Or they automatically are like, oh, I don't want to do that or whatever. And sometimes I'm like, okay, have y'all ever met a teenager? Because they're not actually like the John Hughes movies.
Yeah, they're not all the same, just like we're not all the same. They're
right. And they generally aren't randomly disrespectful unless you're disrespectful to them. Because again, you're not even on their radar. And so the idea of the teenager who, is snotty to the girl in line at the grocery store, well, why would they be that way? And so, and of course, getting into the YA levels of it, if you're writing YA, you need to have at least spoke to a teenager in like the past week, because that changes so much. So, and again, yes, some of them are snarky and broody, and that can change minute to minute, but you've got to have the motivation there.
Right.
You've got to see what's causing that.
Sometimes lately I've seen the alpha female, who I like, actually. I like seeing the female billionaire, or, kind of that role reversal. But that take no prisoners attitude can only go so far. Because just like any other character, she must be a complete person, and she has to have a reason for acting like a complete bitch if that's how you're going to write her. And just like the alpha, there's got to be a softer side, right? So if you're throwing that trope into reverse and giving us an alpha female, just make sure she's well-rounded too.
Yes.
Not a reason to be.
Yeah, we need to know why is she mean to the people in her office? Why does she snap at the sales girl at her favorite boutique? There needs to be a reason why they're acting that way.
Yeah. All right, that was easy. Oh, this one bugs me a lot. And I hit on it a little bit earlier, so we won't spend too much time. The other woman who gets tossed in as a plot device. I see it a lot in YA. Like in school, there's always the girl who's trying to steal your boyfriend, or who's just mean for no real reason. And a lot of times in romance, it's like a random other woman that appears in order to make somebody jealous, but we don't ever really understand, like, who is she and what is her motivation? Like, why is she doing what she's doing? And so having, the love triangle thing or the little jealousy factor is good conflict addition, but make sure that the character who's adding that conflict has a reason to do so.
Right. They can't just be showing up to interfere with things because they want to show up and interfere with things. What are they getting out of it? What do they stand to gain from it?
Yeah. I think we've hit like that. That's a common theme that we've been sort of echoing here today. Make sure all your characters have a motivation. Nobody is just there because you put them there because it was convenient, or they shouldn't be.
Well, and the other thing that goes with the other woman being there just as a plot device is another one of my personal rants, which I will keep down a little bit, is the other woman who randomly shows up to make the woman jealous, but she's not really a love interest. It's a sister or a cousin or my childhood best friend who's here with her wife or whatever. And it's a misunderstanding.
This always happens just as they're about to get to the final declaration. Like one of them will go to where the other person is to surprise them and tell them they love them, but they will see that he is having a romantic dinner with another woman and run away. And it's all a misunderstanding, and don't do that.
And instead of being a grown-up and saying, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Who are you?
I thought you were in a committed relationship. Who's this?
Yes, you didn't mention that. So yeah, that one drives me crazy. And then go ahead.
Go. No.
The last one we came up with was the absolutely clueless heroine or hero.
Known as
Too
Stupid to Live.
Oh yes, the Too Stupid to Live person. This is the person that does things that make no sense. And it's things like if you're writing horror, this is the person who's like, I'm home all alone with no weapon. I should probably go down into the basement and investigate those scary sounds all by myself.
Or I saw a shadow outside the door. I'm going to go out and see what it was.
Right, yeah. I'm going to go stand on the patio, like in the movie Scream. I'm going to go stand on the patio when he's like, I can see you. I'm going to stand up here and be like, well, what am I doing now? So I make myself an easier target. Where you see that more in the kind of work that we do, because I don't do horror at all.
I would love to, but we don't get any horror.
Yeah, if y'all want to send us horror, send them all to Nancy. I am not your girl for that.
I read a fair amount of horror, actually. I like it.
Good. You need to look at our comments. Yes, don't go up the stairs. Where you see that more in romance is that people get overly angry for no reason, or they have some kind of reaction to something that doesn't fit at all, but the writer needs that to happen, so that's why it's happening. Right.
Or they just do things that like make no sense at all. Like we're in the middle of this, like we're having a fight. I'm very upset with you, and I'm like, I'm going to go have breakfast and just leave just things where the reader is going to be like, wait, what?
Well, and this falls in romantic suspense too. I have two things about the romantic suspense. One is you're not stopping to have sex when you're being chased by bad guys.
Probably not.
It's just not going to happen. The other is that whenever the hero's like, these bad guys are coming after you, they shot up your car or left a dead turtle on your porch or whatever, I need to protect you, or I want to hire protection for you. And the girl's like, no, I'm my own person. I would be like, surround me with bodyguards. It is fine. Because they need to have a motive. If your hero or heroine is turning down the hero's protection when she is clearly in danger, there needs to be a motive for why she would do that. Why is she willing to risk herself?
Definitely. Well, I think that kind of wraps us up. And a lot of what we've talked about, and a lot of what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, is in the Elements of Romance, the course that we're offering right now, which is on sale until the end of May, I think. So there's a pinned post on our Facebook page at Evident Inc. that will take you to the discounted sales page for the Elements of Romance, and I think there's some sample lessons there, so you can kind of see how the course is put together. And we're totally open to some feedback. That's the first course that we've launched. I think we're going to have at least one more up. I know we said June 1. That's probably not where we are at now. We've changed.
We're going to try. I'm working very hard on a deep POV class that I want to have up by June 1st, because I think it would be very beneficial to a lot of people. But again, I'm suddenly going to a NASCAR graduation, so we'll just have to see how that's going to work out. But yes, I very much hope to have it up by June 1st.
Okay, and I think we've got a couple more coming. I'm working on humor, writing humor into fiction, and I think, well, I don't want to say what's wrong, but something character focused. I just can't remember what it was. Making memorable characters, I think.
Yes, I think that's what we talked about.
Yeah. So we're super excited about those and hope that they'll kind of round out some of the story strategy stuff that we've been offering and help writers find their way through this twisty path of putting together a good story. All right, what is coming up?
So next week, we're kind of wrapping up this series that we've been talking about. And the next week, we are talking about things that make editors bang their heads on their desk.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're going from, like we talked about the cliches today. Next week is going to be a little bit more deeper into the mechanics of things and kind of specific. All right, this makes us crazy whenever we get this. And we'll have examples and strategies to fix things.
Well, and let's be careful not to categorize this as like Dawn and Nancy's pet peeves, because I think they're bigger issues. They're story problems.
Yes.
Just like cliches can be problems, these are sort of bigger systemic problems that will screw up your ability to put together a cohesive story.
Right. It's not just my bias against people running into each other. This is actual. We do talk to other editors and interact and say, okay, do your clients do this? Yes, I'm seeing it. How do you fix it? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then the week after that, we are going to talk about some self-editing tips. We're going to give some actionable strategies of things you can do before you send your manuscript off to an editor.
Yep. Uh-oh. Oh, no. Dawn must have hit a button. I'm here all alone. Well, that's okay, because we were wrapping up. So we're going to talk about actionable things that you can do before you send your manuscript to Evident Ink or whatever editor you're using that will make the money that you're paying that editor go a little further, because they're not going to have to spend time doing the really basic stuff. And then we're going to take a week off because I'm moving across the country and Dawn is doing life things. And I'm so self-centered right now that I can't remember what, oh, here she is. You're back.
I just disappeared. I don't know. I don't know what happened. So I'm back now.
I just said, and then I said we're going to take a week off after that because we both have life going on. And then we'll be back to answer questions. So what we're going to do in between now and that week off is put up a pinned post where you can drop questions that you'd like to see answered live. And we will try to get through as many as we can. You're also welcome to DM them to me or to Dawn or to the Evident Ink page. However you want to send them in, we're happy to answer them.
Please ask us questions so we're not just talking to ourselves. I mean, we can, but please, we want to help. We want to give the answers to your questions the best we can.
Yep. So hopefully we'll see you back here next week and in the Elements of Romance. All right. Have a good week, guys, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.